Hello, I'm Alyssa, and my pronouns are she and her. I want to welcome you to our weekly virtual worship service of Buckman Bridge Unitarian Universalist Church, or as we like to call it, BBUUC. Unitarian Universalism is a faith denomination that is guided by 7 principles, grounded in the humanistic teachings of the world's religion. To find out more about Unitarian Universalism, please visit the UUA website at uua.org. I am so happy that you have chosen to connect with us today. As we slowly make our way back to some in-person gatherings, we continue to offer other opportunities to connect virtually, including classes, small group ministries, family RE, and fellowship hour on Sundays, where we discuss today's service and enjoy each other's virtual company. I hope you will check out our church website, bbuuc.org, where you can find links to these resources on our calendar. You can also check out our Facebook page as well as your email for more information. Now, let us open our minds and hearts as we worship together. Our chalice words today come from Tim Haley. Amid all the noise in our lives, we take this moment to sit in silence, to give thanks for another day, to give thanks for all those in our lives who have brought us warmth and love, to give thanks for the gift of life. We know we are on our pilgrimage here, but a brief moment in time. Let us open ourselves here, now, to the process of becoming more whole, of living more fully, of giving and forgiving more freely, of understanding more completely the meaning of our lives here on this earth.
Good morning, friends. It is so good to be with you today. I have a lesson I want to share, but before we get started, let's see what's in the Wonder Box. Do you know what this is? This is a nesting doll. This doll has a surprise. When we take off one layer, there's another one inside. Have you ever seen these before? And let's see, there's another one. And another one, just layer after layer. One more maybe? Oh, look. So we have layer after layer after layer until we get to the center, the core. Imagine people are like this doll. At the center lies our true self, surrounded by layers that we've developed through our lives, from labels and expectations we or other people put on us. You know, you draw well, so you should be an artist when you grow up. You're a real good talker, so you should be a lawyer. You're a boy, so you shouldn't cry, or you're a girl, so you should really like pink stuff. These are all things people or society tells us how to behave, what you should like, what you should do. That's a lot of layers of stuff. It's not who we really are. It's what others think we are. Have you ever considered how many layers you have around yourself? At the core of you is your true self, unbreakable. Layers and layers over time get wrapped around us. One layer until we're unable to see our true self. Our true self gets buried in all these layers. Our job in life is to learn to get rid of these layers. So I want you to hear these words. You may think of it as a way to peel off some of the layers to get to your true self. Got your listening ears on? First, you are a miracle. Never forget this. The science alone of it is mind-blowing. You are unique. No one will ever be as good at being you as you are. You are enough. Always. Never doubt this. There's always more to learn, but that's not failure. That is a gift, and it can be fun. Every obstacle you encounter is an opportunity to fall further into the miracle that is you. Remember to forgive. Forgive every which way. Forgive him, forgive her, forgive them, forgive yourself. Remember, compassion is the key to forgiveness. Compassion means that you feel the humanity in others. And in the end, as in the beginning, you are amazing. I wonder, who are you at your core? And with this, our lesson is told. Until the next time.
Sharing our joys and concerns with each other is one of the beauties of our community. We show love by sharing each other's burdens. It doesn't change the situation, but it makes our burden a bit lighter. And shared joy is increased joy. We light a flame for Cindy and Pete J., who have both come down with breakthrough cases of COVID. We send them our love and best wishes for a speedy recovery. We light a flame of joy that BBUUC has completed the 5 practices of welcoming renewal, resulting in our status as a welcoming congregation being renewed by the UUA. Our deepest gratitude to Elizabeth Deku and members of our welcoming congregation ministry who led us in these efforts. We light a flame of concern and sorrow for the people of Afghanistan who are desperately trying to leave, and for those helping and working hard on this task. We pray for people to open their borders and hearts to those displaced. And finally, for those who will not be relocated. We lift our concern for all expats and journalists in harm's way. We light a flame of concern and safety for our military troops deployed in Afghanistan who are tasked with the mission to evacuate and withdraw and risk their lives on the ground in the service of our country. We also hold in our hearts all of the men and women who served, were wounded, and who died there. In these times of upheaval, many may feel re-traumatized. May they find comfort and peace, and may they feel valued for their service and sacrifice. We light a flame reminding us to hold the people of Haiti in our hearts and in our prayers after the devastating earthquake that crumbled homes and buildings, killing more than 1,200 people. The country still hasn't fully recovered from the 2010 earthquake and Hurricane Matthew in 2016. It was already suffering from political instability following the assassination of its president and struggling with the coronavirus pandemic. And one last candle we light for all of the joys and concerns that remain in our heart, but not here spoken.
Since what we choose is what we are, and what we love we yet shall be, the goal may ever shine afar, the will to win it makes us free.
As we prepare for our virtual plate offering, I'd like to share some words with you from Erica A. Hewitt. The offering that we take each Sunday isn't just a stale habit. It's an opportunity to recommit to this place and to this people. Our offering is an affirmation, a yes. When we give, we say yes to something we value. With our gifts freely given, may we say yes to the values of our faith. May our offering help us practice Unitarian Universalism within and beyond our congregation as tools to empower our mission. BBUUC exists to create and nourish a loving community that seeks justice and respect for all. A note of thanks for the continued support from our congregation through your pledge donations. We are so very grateful. To make an offering to support the mission of our church and its operations, please find the link to our PayPal Giving Fund on our YouTube page or through our website. Your contributions are all appreciated.
Now I Become Myself by May Sarton. Now I become myself. It's taken time, many years and places. I've been dissolved and shaken, worn other people's faces, run madly as if time were there, terribly old, crying a warning. Hurry, you will be dead before... What? Before you reach the morning? Or the end of the poem is clear? Or love safe in the walled city? Now to stand still, to be here, feel my own weight and density. The black shadow on the paper is my hand, the shadow of a word, as thought shapes the shaper, falls heavy on the page, is heard. All fuses now, falls into place, from wish to action, word to silence. My work, my love, my time, my face, gathered into one intense gesture of growing like a plant. As slowly as the ripening fruit, fertile, detached, and always spent, falls but does not exhaust the root. So all the poem is, can give, grows in me to become the song, made so and rooted by love. Now there is time, and time is young. Oh, in this single hour I live all of myself, and do not move. I, the pursued who madly ran, stand still, and stop the sun. That's Now I Become Myself by May Sarton.
Good morning, everyone. I'm standing on the corner of Lexington Avenue and East 80th Street in New York City, and this beautiful building behind me is the Unitarian Church of All Souls. This was my home church for over 20 years, and a big reason for that is that it was also the home of Reverend Dr. Forrest Church. As many of you know, Elizabeth Teal and I were married by Dr. Church in September of 1984 in this very building. So as you can imagine, it means a great deal to me. Forrest's philosophies are the centerpiece of the sermon that I want to share with you this morning. It was written and originally delivered by Reverend Peter Friedrichs of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Delaware County, Pennsylvania, which is outside of Philadelphia. The title of the sermon is Be Who You Are, and it is my honor to share it with you this morning. As part of my seminary training, I spent a summer working as a hospital chaplain assigned to the psychiatric ward. I found it to be deeply gratifying work, and I was able to build relationships with many of the patients. Some were long-term, and others had a quick turnaround. Some were what we called bouncers. These were people who would be admitted to the unit because of some behavioral issue. Oftentimes they had simply gone off their meds and needed to be restabilized, treated, and then released. But within a matter of days or weeks, they'd bounce back to the unit again. In the course of my 8 weeks at the hospital, some patients bounced several times. My favorite bouncer was Rose. Rose was a lovely woman, about 80 years old, who suffered from schizophrenia. Rose would be brought into the unit, agitated and aggressive, but within a day or so, with the proper medications, she'd be sweet as a peach. Rose and I had many long conversations about God and love and heaven, and she was rock solid in her Baptist faith. During one of our conversations, Rose expressed to me her concern about all the people who were interviewing her and examining her. She was tired of being treated like a lab rat and told me that she was afraid to even talk to the doctors. I tried to reason with her, reassure her that they were there to help her, and I suggested she just be honest with them in answering their questions. Just be yourself, I told her, and they'll take good care of you. Rose's response to my sage advice was a priceless gem that I will never forget. Be myself, she said. Well, of course I've got to be myself. Everybody else is already taken. Today is the third and final sermon in our series honoring the Reverend Forrest Church, the pastor of All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church in New York City for 30 years. Last month, we sat with the first two parts of the mantra which he claimed served him well as he faced his death. Want what you have and do what you can. The third leg of this stool is the equally simple statement, be who you are. Let me first give you a short refresher on the first two statements before we dive into the third. When Dr. Church urges us to want what we have, he's not telling us to settle, but he's reminding us that even when things look grim, there is much to be thankful for. He uses the metaphor of a window with many panes of glass, each pane representing one of the many aspects of our lives, our health, our job, our relationships. When one pane gets clouded over, he tells us, we must resist the urge to press our noses against that darkened pane to the exclusion of all the others. Instead, we should step back to allow the light from all the other panes to filter through. Dr. Church urges us to engage in thoughtful wishing rather than wishful thinking, and thus be grateful for all the gifts in our lives. To do what we can is to recognize both our own power and our own limitations. He writes that doing what you can means doing all you can, no more and no less. It's not just mucking by, but it's not trying to do more than you can do either. Not stretching yourself out so far that you can't help but force a failure. When we do what we can, we seek to achieve the significant goals that lie within our power. And while we may risk failure, we don't set ourselves up for certain defeat. And now we find ourselves face to face with Dr. Church's third admonition, be who you are. This, he admits, is the hardest task of all. Simply put, he tells us, to be who you are is not to fake your existence. He writes that each one of us is unique with unique flaws and gifts. The world doesn't owe us a living, we owe the world a living, our very own. In his book, Love and Death, Forrest Church tells of the opportunity he had as the son of the U.S. Senator Frank Church to enter politics while he was still working on his doctorate in theology. After running his father's presidential primary campaign in Nebraska, the son was ready to jump into the father's footsteps and run for public office himself. Fortunately, he listened to his father's advice to live his own life, not the life his father had led. And in doing so, writes the younger Church, I found my calling. I answered a call that was mine and not someone else's. He goes on to tell us, to envy another's skills, looks, or gifts rather than embracing your own nature and call is to fail in two respects. In trying to unsuccessfully to be who we aren't, we fail to become who we are. Be who you are. As Rose pointed out, it's a rather inane concept. Of course you have to be who you are. You are who you are because everyone else is already taken. But if it's so simple, then why do we spend so much of our lives trying to be who we're not? trying to be like someone else, or trying to be the someone that someone else thinks or wants or makes us to believe we should be. In the words of May Sarton's poem we heard earlier, why do we spend so much of our lives dissolved and shaken, wearing other people's faces? To be who we are, who we were born to be, is no easy task. Consider for a moment our childhood and how we learned most of what we've come to know. Although our intellect develops the ability to discern and debate, our most basic form of learning is emulation, or, to put it in simplest terms, copying. Like a giant game of follow the leader, we grow up watching what others do and observing it and observing the outcome. If we like what we see, we try to do the same in hopes of gaining a similar result. From a very early age, we are wired to be like rather than simply to be. For some of us, this message was explicit. Why can't you be more like your brother, sister, cousin, fill in the blank? Our media convinces us that to be accepted or happy or successful, we need to act a certain way, drive a certain car, marry a member of the opposite sex. There's a reason why the Rolling Stones song Satisfaction, still going strong all these decades later, it speaks in part to the futility of trying to be the person that someone else thinks we should be. When I'm watching my TV and that man comes on to tell me how white my shirts can be, but he can't be a man because he doesn't smoke the same cigarettes as me. I try and I try and I try, but I can't get no satisfaction. Role models are invaluable for us on a societal and an individual level. They serve to inspire us, to motivate us, to consider what is possible. And there are certain traits or aspects of others that we should try and emulate. I grew up when Superman and Batman were all the rage on TV, and who can argue that we shouldn't work for truth, justice, and the American way? The danger comes, of course, when we try not just to be like our role models, but to become them. This is a recipe for disaster, a formula for failure. Neither you nor I will ever be able to be more powerful than a locomotive or capable of leaping tall buildings in a single bound. So when we try to be like Mike, remember the Michael Jordan commercials? We are destined for disappointment. Even if it's not superheroes or pro athletes we try to model ourselves after. In Forrest Church's case, he came close to making the mistake of trying to become like his father, the powerful Senator Frank Church of Idaho. Sometimes the influences that exert their power over us are more subtle. We grow up in a family of achievers, and although nothing is explicitly stated, we incorporate the message that much is expected of us. A parent's well-intentioned actions sends a signal of what they hope for us, and we receive the gesture, consciously or subconsciously, as a mandate. If you hear things like, "You're so good at math, you should become a scientist," if you hear that often enough as a child, you're likely to believe that you should become a scientist, and that your passion for dance or music or social work is misplaced. By the same token, if you hear over and over again, "You'll never amount to anything," that too becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The forces that dictate against being who we are powerful and many. To be who we are can be like swimming upstream against a strong current of expectations and what I call the tyranny of the shoulds. And as if these forces aren't enough to defeat us, to be who we are is made all the more challenging by our lack of self-knowledge and self-awareness. Perhaps the greatest challenge to living into Forrest Church's mandate to be who you are is discovering just who and what that is. Living in 21st century America, most of us are blessed with lives of comfort and relative ease, And so we can ask the questions, who am I and what do I want to be when I grow up? Many of us spend years of our lives and thousands of dollars in therapy to discover the answers to those questions. And in finding them, some of us follow our bliss, to use Joseph Campbell's term, while others, constrained by factors such as fear, family, or finances, remain living a life that is not our own until our days run out. In his book, Let Your Life Speak, author and educator Parker Palmer tells us of his journey of discovering his true self. He calls the true self the self implanted in us by the God who made us in God's own image, the self that wants nothing more or less than for us to be who we're created to be. To embark on a journey to discover one's God-given self takes courage and commitment. It is risky business, requires us to shed the masks and the costumes that populate our closets, to strip down to our naked selves and take a close look at the mirror. There, we are called to see ourselves, perhaps more challenging yet, to claim ourselves, warts and all. Palmer puts it this way: I know myself to be a person of weakness and strength, liability and giftedness, darkness and light. I now know that to be whole is to reject none of it, but to embrace all of it. This might seem like terribly narcissistic navel-gazing, but it is imperative that we discover our true selves and claim our wholeness in order to fulfill that other mandate Forest Church said, do what we can. When we fail to discover our true selves, when we cling to the persona that is nothing more than the masks we wear or the fulfillment of the expectations of others, it is easy to remain victims of our condition. We are disempowered puppets, actors playing out a script not of our own writing. We blame God or our parents or our partners or for our circumstances. But when we do the hard work of discovering our true and authentic selves, of claiming our whole selves, we are called to live into those selves. Embracing one's wholeness, Parker Palmer writes, makes life more demanding because once you do that, you must live your whole life. You must, in the words of Forest Church, be who you are. The good news is that it's never too late. It's never too late to start the journey of self-discovery, of shedding the skin that we've worn since our birth that has, like an ill-fitting suit, never felt quite right. May Sarton is testament to that. When she wrote the words, "Now there is time and time is young," she was 83 years old. It was at this chronologically advanced age that she discovered her true self and finally felt her own weight and density. To be who we are is to offer to the world the greatest gift we have, to invest our lives and all we do with sincerity, authenticity, and deep commitment. It leads us into relationships with other like-minded selves, and in entering into those relationships, these relationships are sacred in the true meaning of that word. We cannot help but bring our collective power to bear against the forces of injustice, hatred, and oppression. Our collective wholeness will, by definition, heal the world. I would like to wrap up this sermon series by telling you one more Forest Church story. Forest had what I consider to be a very public spiritual practice that he engaged in every week. Each Sunday from the pulpit, he would conclude his sermon with these words:
Amen. I love you, and may God bless us all.
Just weeks before his death, he explained to his successor, Reverend Galen Gingrich, why he said, "I love you," at the end of his sermons. When I say "I love you" from the pulpit, he told Galen, something connects. I get connected to the congregation, and they get connected to each other. It's almost like For a moment, at least, we are part of each other, of something larger than ourselves. It's the human form of love divine, as Blake put it. And besides, Dr. Church went on, someone once told me that I'm the only person in her life who ever says, I love you. She comes to church to hear someone say that she matters. We all learn to be told that we matter, that our true selves are worthy of love and capable of life. In our common humanity, we share our vulnerabilities and our sensitivities, and we offer them up here on the altar of hope. I pray today that we may each find it within ourselves, each and every day, to want what we have, to do what we can, and to be who we are. Amen. I love you, and may God bless us all.
what someone else believes that I am. I will no longer be defined by what someone else believes that I am. I will no longer be defined by what someone else believes that I am. And now that I have dropped the weight, I am light as a feather. It's time to elevate.
We are going to extinguish our chalice today with these closing words, which come from Brené Brown. If we are going to find our way out of shame and back to each other, vulnerability is the path and courage is the light. To set down those lists of what we're supposed to be is brave. To love ourselves and support each other in the process of becoming real is perhaps the greatest single act of daring greatly. May it be so. Go in peace. And thank you for being with us today.